right, good morning, everybody. What a great speech from the governor here of the great state of Georgia, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of FRC to, like Tony said, what does this look like in a post-Roe world? On June 24th, 2022, after nearly 50 long years of prayer, advocacy, elections, and legal battles, the Supreme Court finally corrected that grievous wrong that was Roe v. Wade, which mandated legal abortion through all 9 months in all 50 states. And for that, we have to praise God. So let's just give it up for that wonderful work that many of you, I'm sure, were a part of as well. But as we've talked about, the work is truly just beginning. We are now living in a new era in which Congress and the state legislators, courts in DC, and courts around the country can enact policies that truly protect unborn life in the womb from the very moment of conception. No longer are pro-life measures simply hypotheticals or pro-life campaign promises fleeting words. Now, the pro-life movement has been given a new opportunity to protect unborn life and families at large. And our panel today is going to give us a unique insight into how this is already playing out in America. But just to quickly set the stage, we've been doing research of state laws across the country. Every single state, we've dived into the state codes to see what pro-life laws, or lack thereof, are on the books in each state. And you can access this resource at frc.org/pro-life maps. And it's an interactive map where you can click on your state. You can click on the great state of Georgia and see that they are currently enforcing a Heartbeat Protection Act, which protects unborn life when a heartbeat's detected right around 5-6 weeks of gestation. But to give you the national picture, right now there are 19 states that have laws on the books that protect life at conception, which is just truly a miracle. There's 4 additional states that protect life at heartbeat, Georgia being one of them. There's 7 states that protect life at some gestational limit, from 15 weeks, some all the way up to 24 weeks. And sadly, there are still 20 states in the union that allow elective abortions on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy. And as you can imagine, these are some of the most populated states in the country. So we have our work cut out for us. But that's just to give you the look at what our state laws are, and to just let you know some of these laws are in effect and others, though, are caught up in court battles, and this is what we're going to dive into with our panel today. So we can bring out our panelists here, and we'll introduce them as they come on out here. First, we got State Senator from South Carolina, Senator Josh Kimbrell. We're happy to have him here today. He hails from Spartanburg, South Carolina, where he represents Senate District 11. He has been serving in the state Senate since 2020 when he unseated a longtime Democrat incumbent, so we're so happy to have him here today. Thanks, Senator Kimbrell. Yeah, you guys can have a seat right there. Yeah. Then next to him, we got Muzio. Cole is the president of Frontline Policy Council, where he brings a wealth of political and campaign experience to the values issues here right in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. His organization was an early supporter of Governor Kemp, who you all just heard a great speech from, and worked on the front lines, pun intended, of the Georgia Heartbeat Act that was passed in 2019. So let's give Cole a round of applause. And last but certainly not least, we have Brandi Swindell. And Brandi comes here all the way from Idaho. She is a nationally known speaker, advocate for human rights, and the founder and CEO of Stanton Healthcare and Stanton Public Policy Center. Stanton Healthcare is committed to providing women with unexpected pregnancy, professional medical care, women's wellness care, tangible support, hope, and compassion. For over 20 years, Brandi has been an advocate for empowering women and protecting the lives of the preborn. Some of her work also includes fighting to end the Uyghur genocide, working for freedom of speech and religion, and organizing the only public memorial in Tiananmen Square for the students who were killed there during the 1989 massacre. So she cuts across a lot of the issues FRC works on. And most recently, though, Brandi was called to testify before the Senate Health Committee in DC, of which I had the pleasure to watch, and she did an amazing job going toe-to-toe with some very radical pro-abortion senators, and did an amazing job to represent the pro-life movement. So we welcome Brandi here as well. All right, so let's dive right into this panel. Senator Kimbrell, we are so glad to have you here today. He came right down from Columbia, South Carolina, so right up the neck of the woods from here. But give us an insight. You are a state that's currently in a legislative battle over the life issue. Can you just paint the picture? What laws sort of were on the book as Roe fell, and what are you guys currently debating in the South Carolina Senate?
Well, for starters, it's good to be in Georgia, and I'm telling everybody that I'm really excited to watch Brian Kemp get reelected down here. Although Our job to recruit businesses to South Carolina would be a lot easier if he didn't win re-election down here, but we're kind of hopeful for the sake of the cause of life and a whole range of other things, go Governor Kemp. You know, the fight, I think a lot of people believed after Roe fell that was it. You know, that's really the hard political battle we're in now, is a lot of folks, I believe, maybe don't understand the system, how this works. Right? The average person out there is working, trying to raise a family, make a living. They don't necessarily understand that when Dobbs is handed down and Roe's overturned, like, okay, well, we're pro-life now. Really, the battle's just begun. I mean, all we did was press reset to where we were 50 years ago. And anybody that thinks for a minute that these radical pro-abortion extremists aren't going to continue to be radical pro-abortion extremists, you need to visit the State House in this state or any other state. So we had Heartbeat on the books before Roe was overturned. And that was the greatest step forward we'd had in 50 years up until Dobbs was overturned, right? And once the Supreme Court overturned Roe with Dobbs and they allowed the stay against South Carolina's Heartbeat bill to be lifted, we thought, great, we can move forward now. We're going to be in good shape. We can go for to ban abortions at conception with very limited and narrow exceptions. But the state Supreme Court, we won't get into all this here because y'all are in Georgia, you don't have to worry about it as much. Our state Supreme Court's Chief Justice makes Sonia Sotomayor look like Antonin Scalia. And we're working on replacing him in next year, actually. And I'm determined we're going to have a conservative court. But they decided to go in and put a stay against the Heartbeat bill. So South Carolina has a Heartbeat bill in the books right now, but for all intents and purposes, it's not in effect right now. And so we have people driving from Atlanta to South Carolina. And no offense to Georgia, it's a great state, but South Carolina is more conservative than Georgia politically, and yet we have people coming to South Carolina to get abortions right now because of our Supreme Court. So this past week, we went in and fixed, there was a law in the books the court cited, saying in 1974, a Democratic legislature had codified the Roe decision into code. And we struck that out last week, so it's out. We expect the governor to sign it. We don't want any abortion tourism in South Carolina, but now the fight will be how do we go from all the way to conception with very narrow exceptions, and that fight will go on, Connor. I think that's going to be the rest of the year for me, and probably the next 2 years.
Yeah, and that paints a great picture. Like he said, you know, we have 50 long years of legal abortion in our country that our culture and society has now been used to. Many of us here, that's all we've known is a U.S. where abortion has been legal for all 9 months. So it's not a flip of the switch where instantaneously we go back to this pro-life nation. It's going to take work, and we're seeing that exactly play out in South Carolina and other states around the country. So let's switch to you, Cole. You guys had a battle like this, but a few years back in 2019, and as I hear you guys were right on the front lines of this issue. So walk us through how the Heartbeat Act in Georgia came to be and what that looked like when Roe fell and the process to get that into effect.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Heartbeat starts with, I mean, you got pray, vote, stand. It starts with voting. You know, in 2018, you had a very clear choice. You had Brian Kemp who said, I'm going to pass a Heartbeat bill. And because Georgia's a swingish state right now, people didn't believe him. And you had a politician that actually did what he said he was going to do, and he signed the Heartbeat bill into law in 2019. And Georgia's a very difficult state. We're a microcosm of all the battles going on around the country. We have Hollywood here, you've got big business here, and they don't like our issues. They did not want the governor to stand for life, but he did. And I mean, we could talk all day about the story of how that happened, but passed that law in 2019. The day that the Dobbs decision came out, you know, because we had a court battle and federal court held that up, the day the Dobbs decision came out, our Attorney General, Chris Carr, filed to remove the injunction on our bill, and we were able to implement that. And we are now saving lives. I'm aware personally of someone that was driving up to South Carolina to have an abortion just last week, and the Lord was able to work on that girl's heart, and she chose to keep the baby. Praise the Lord. But to your point, it is so important that we remember that the battle is only beginning. In the state of Georgia, you know, realistically, moving from Heartbeat to zero is going to be a very difficult battle. And I love the name of your conference, Pray, Vote, Stand, because all of those things have to be involved moving forward. We have to pray. We have to engage the church. We have to go vote. I mean, for the first time in all of our lifetimes, life is on the ballot. You have a choice whether you want to vote for life or whether you want to vote for death. Because that's the reality of what we're facing when we go vote. Stand in the legislature, stand in culture. The one thing I'd add to that is love. We have to love, and the great work that you're doing, we have to love women and make sure that they know, because you said 50 years of Roe being baked into our culture. That is seeped into every ethos in terms of how we approach a sexual ethic, how we approach a moral ethic, how we look at abortion. We have to make sure that we are loving women and stepping up as a church and as a body of Christ to serve and care for them and meet this moment. So all those things have to go into that, but it all started with voting. And a whole lot of strategy went into making that bill come into place in 2019. But we're saving lives here in Georgia because of it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And Cole, you highlight a great point. You know, he mentioned the Attorney General having to act on to enforce the law. You know, Senator Kimbrell mentioned his state Supreme Court. No longer, like I mentioned in the opening, that campaign promises on pro-life, they aren't fleeting anymore. This is real. And our elected representatives now have to put their money where their mouth is, and Senator Kimbrell's doing that. But it just highlights how important your local races are. Obviously, your governor's important. Those are a lot of high-profile races. Who is your state Attorney General? That really matters to who enforces your laws. Who are those justices on your state Supreme Court? That matters for life, for election integrity laws. We saw redistricting maps all across the country thrown out this last cycle because of rogue Supreme Court. So you really need to be looking down that ballot, because each of these races no longer just a fleeting name. The life issue is on the ballot down to the local city mayor now. And so that is really important. We just want to emphasize how important that is. But Cole, you also ended there with love, adding that fifth point there. I love that. And so let's turn to Brandi here. The work she is doing in Idaho is just so amazing. So why don't you just unpack that for us? What is Stanton Healthcare? What are these pregnancy care centers? We've already talked about a bunch so far. Give us an inside look at what these organizations do, your organization, and how you're on the front lines of this issue.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to share about the work we do, and most importantly, to represent the women that we serve, right? How do we support women in a post-Roe America? How do we support women in abortion-free states? And it's through that love and compassion, quality care and services. So I founded Stanton Healthcare in 2006. We are based out in Idaho, my home state, beautiful state if you ever want to come visit. And we have 3 centers out there, and then we actually have centers outside of Idaho. We have a Stanton in Southern California. We have a Stanton, Detroit. We just bought a building that we are remodeling on 8 Mile, a public policy center in Washington, D.C., and 2 international clinics, Stanton Belfast in Northern Ireland and Stanton Edinburgh in Scotland. And so we have an international expansion and a waiting list of more clinics that we want to start. But our heart, when I started Stanton, and our leadership were really kind of praying and thinking about what we wanted to do, is we wanted to have a very intentional strategy where we would go where the women are. So that means part of our key strategy is opening clinics right next door to Planned Parenthoods, right? Right next door to abortion clinics. Yeah, right? Full court press. Yeah. And Planned Parenthood has actually sued us over that and threatened us with $30,000 in legal fees. And then they said, well, we'll only go after you for $15,000 in legal fees if you settle. And I told our attorney, I'll go to jail before I ever pay a penny to Planned Parenthood to settle, right? Yeah, we're not going to be bullied, right? We're not going to be bullied. We're not going to flinch. We're not going to be scared, because women deserve access to life-affirming quality care. And so that's what we do. That's what we do at Stanton Healthcare, set up next to abortion clinics. And we provide exceptional care. That is our heart and goal, is that we would have state-of-the-art clinics staffed by medical professionals, trained client advocates that can meet women where they are with individualized care, that they would be confident to choose life for their babies. And that's what we're seeing. The truth is, the abortion industry, those are radical, aggressive, pro-abortionists, they will continue to spread the disinformation that women wake up every morning wanting abortions. And if they face an unexpected pregnancy, they are choosing abortion. That is not the truth. Women want diversity in care. They want access to alternatives to abortion. And that's why our clinics are busy all the time, right? And we serve the same demographic that Planned Parenthood does, right? It's the same woman facing an unexpected pregnancy that they're trying to really prey on with their very aggressive agenda. So that's what Stanton Healthcare is. is we're unique in that we have a public policy center arm to what we do, just like Planned Parenthood does. And so we're very competitive. We are down at our state house. We are working in Washington, D.C. with Congress. We are working hand in hand with our elected officials and our lawmakers. So grateful for our life-affirming lawmakers that are actually passing pro-woman, pro-life legislation. And so, we do things like take our mobile clinic. We have a Stanton mobile clinic, 36-foot Class A RV that we've converted into a state-of-the-art medical clinic. We take it down to the State House every legislative session so that lawmakers can come out, get a tour of our clinic, see the ultrasound machine, meet our moms, meet the babies that have been saved because of their work to have, life-affirming laws passed. And so this is a critical time. This is a momentous time, a historic time. And like you said, this isn't the overturning of Roe isn't the finish line. This is the starting line, and we're busier than ever. Our work has just begun in many ways.
Yeah, it's truly amazing work, and to see that highlighted in front of the whole country, in front of the U.S. Senate in a committee this last couple weeks, it was just amazing to finally get these clinics be able to show for themselves what they truly do, despite the lies, despite all that pressure that's put against them to say they're dangerous, they're misleading women. This is true help and true care that women need. And so we're so grateful for your work.
If I can just add to that,
Yeah.
because the disinformation is, so off base, I get real passionate about it. We actually have a third-party accreditation, all of our Stanton Healthcare. So we have the highest standard of medical excellence that you can have for an ambulatory center. So that means we actually have more medical covering than Planned Parenthood does because they self-regulate. They accredit themselves, which, by the way, is something that states need to look at in the Congress, that they really don't have that much accountability. So when they spread the disinformation that we're fake clinics and we should be shut down, it is a complete lie. And the truth is, we have a more legitimate quality of care than they actually provide.
Yeah, and give a round of applause for that. And Planned Parenthood, everybody knows them. They are the nation's largest abortion provider. We look at their annual reports every year. It's supposed to come out every January. They snuck out this year's annual report just on Friday night, the other night, for nobody to see. And as we all know, not only are abortions up, not only is taxpayer funding up to go with it, but all their other health services were down in this last year. They claim that they're these women's health clinics, and if you don't go there, you can't get health care if you're a woman. That is just the furthest thing from the truth. And so they are seeing less patients, less services out the door, but don't worry, more abortions, and we're funding them at the highest level we ever have. On that, we saw also, we need to support the pregnancy care centers through public policy, but we also saw lots of violence as well against these centers. Senator Kimbrell, what can states do? We've heard some federal responses from the other side, but what can states do to support organizations like pregnancy care centers, protect them from violence and churches from violence? And I'd like to lean into that because while it's important the work that they're doing to pass laws to protect life in the womb, and that's what Georgia did in 2019, that is part of the picture, but there's also the other side of the coin, right? How do we bring back that morals of pro-life beyond just protecting life in the womb through law? What else can state legislators and the governor's offices do?
Well, to have the alternative care is really critical. I mean, one of the things we did last week in the state Senate, and the Planned Parenthood folks are losing their mind. We actually banned any state employee from using their state health insurance card to purchase any kind of abortions. And we permanently banned every single dollar that runs through any state coffer, even if it's a federal matching fund, to being used for Planned Parenthood for anything, period. Now that led to riots. I mean, it's really interesting. These folks that talk about believing in tolerance, have y'all noticed these are the least tolerant people ever? I mean, they only tolerate you so long as you agree with them. That's where the left is now. And we had literally state law enforcement division in SWAT gear with riot gear on and shields holding the doors to the Senate closed to keep the rioters from storming the floor back in June. It literally is to that point. My wife was chased down by a pro-abortion radical in a car because I have a tag that says senator. I did that for speeding tickets, but now I'm thinking I need to get rid of it. So she got chased by a vehicle because some pro-abortion radical. We have pregnancy centers that are being harassed, folks getting vandalized. So we're working on legislation. I'm working with colleagues now. We're going to make it, the left wanted to push this hate crimes thing last year. And then a lot of that was designed to try to silence churches like this. for standing up even for traditional sexual values. I mean, we're not into that today, but the point is they want to silence anybody that doesn't support the alphabet soup that is the LGBTQIA stuff, right? And so I said, that's fine. We're just going to add 2 riders to the hate crimes bill. We're not going to let you prosecute churches, and you're going to be prosecuted with a hate crime if you attack a police officer or a pregnancy center. The Democrats killed their own bill after that. So the hate crimes bill died because they don't want to do that. So now we're just going to introduce legislation that says if you attack a pregnancy center, we're going to put you in jail as a Class A felony, no stops, no ifs, ands, or buts. Because truly, Connor, we're at a point right now, and I want to be clear, and not to mission creep on your question. We all have to be mindful because a lot of y'all are involved with your elected officials. Some of y'all are elected officials. We spent 50 years trying to overturn Roe versus Wade, okay? That's great. I understand the impatience. I'm just going to say from a messaging standpoint, we spent 50 years to get to where we are right now. We don't want to blow it in 50 weeks. And some of the messaging is bad. And we've got to stop talking about, I mean, we let the media control this narrative. I spent a lot of time on radio and TV. I look a lot better on radio. But I spent a lot of time on radio and TV back home, and I always tried to tell people, stop responding to their questions. Try to flip it around. Because we're sitting here trying to defend what are the exceptions we support. Okay, look, we can have a conversation about exceptions. Why don't we talk about the fact that states like Virginia, even under Governor Youngkin when he's trying to push back, will let you get an abortion to the day the child's born. That's radical. And so we need to stop letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and we're trying to push back. I mean, in the state Senate, we had 2 sides in this debate last week. We had one Republican, I won't worry about the Democrats, we know where they are. I had one Republican who joined the Democrats, and she was basically saying, I want abortion all the way. And we are now going to cut off her funding from the caucus for the next election cycle, but we're going to talk about that later. And then I had another guy in our caucus who got a great heart, but he's basically saying, I want to put mom in jail. Okay, those are 2 extremes we don't need to tolerate, ladies and gentlemen. Because if we go to start putting moms in jail, we're going to lose the public debate. If we go to let's have abortion on demand as Republicans, you need to switch parties. The discussion needs to be how do we move the ball down the field right now and not have spent 50 years to get rid of Roe and then blow it in 50 weeks. That's my message to everybody. Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Let's stop talking about letting them talk about what we're going to do. Let's talk about what they want to do, and that is let those children be killed to the day that they're born, and that is radical, and I don't care what the media says. The American people do not support that. In every poll I have seen, 70% of the American people think that is barbaric and is unacceptable. That's the message for November.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Senator Kimbrell. You hit the nail on the head with this. This is sort of the moment we're in, right? We have been working, the pro-life movement is at its strongest it's ever been, right? 50 years in the making. Yet, just like you outlined, this is no easy, there's no silver bullet. There's not just letting the gears turn and life is protected. We have to work. We have to work on messaging. We have to be unified. There's going to be differences in strategy. Everybody comes, whether it's the different faith background or different political backgrounds, but if you're all here for the same goal, which is protecting unborn children in the womb, valuing mothers and fathers. Every child, as we heard last night, has a mother and a father. Supporting them, valuing them. We have to be united. And like you said, we can't let, perfection be the enemy of the good. If we can gain ground, if we can save as many unborn lives as we can today, we need to do that and continue to push the ball forward. And that's what we're trying to do in South Carolina, and that's what state legislators across the country are trying to do. So that's a great insight into what we're facing. On that media angle, cool. I'd love to hear a little bit about this. The Heartbeat Act, everyone heard about that, and it went into effect, protecting life at 6 weeks. But there was a unique provision that did not get a lot of headlines unless you really read down the page, and that was the fact that unborn children now are valued for state law as unborn children, and that had a big impact on your tax credits. Can you walk us through a little bit of what that means? And I believe that's the first state to actually implement a law like that.
Yeah, so in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, sorry, my wedding ring just slipped off. Baby, I still love you if you're watching. But in the state of Georgia, House Bill 481 recognizes that the fundamental truth, life begins at conception. Yeah. And so we recognize that throughout our code. That means that a woman, as soon as she's pregnant, can begin claiming that child on her taxes as a dependent. Because guess what? She's carrying a human being. A woman who is struggling to get child support can begin claiming child support as soon as she is pregnant, because that's when the father has done his part, and he needs to begin making sure that child's taken care of. We make sure that's recognized in our taxes. One interesting thing about our bill, if you're a pregnant woman and you're driving in the HOV lane, you are with another passenger already. You don't have to have someone sitting next to you. So that's recognized in Georgia too. And look, that's an important thing as you're talking about messaging. We truly value life as a state and as a people. We have to make that the central question. We love women. We care for women. There were Democrats in committee that were offering amendments to rip those provisions out of the bill. The idea that we would give pregnant women some tax relief was so repulsive to them because it recognized the personhood of the unborn that they wanted to rip just that provision out of the bill. We need to make sure people know that and are aware of that. When we're talking about these things, we are authentically pro-life, pro-woman, and that carries forward in everything we know. You asked a great question about legislatures and pregnancy resource centers. Let me throw it back to you for an authenticity question. As church-going people, Bible-believing people, how many of you in this room know where your closest PRC is? Okay. For those of you watching, not a whole lot of hands go up. My challenge to you is to change that before the end of the day, because the left obviously has to know where their closest PRC is, to firebomb it, to protest it, to do whatever. Know where your local PRC is and love life and love these women more than they love death and hate the cause of life. Know where the PRC is. Know how to serve them. Bring blankets. Volunteer a day a month, a day a quarter, whatever you can do to serve there, to show your authenticity, because that's an important, as we're talking about messaging, the first thing people see through is authenticity. If you're someone that hates abortion more than you love life, they're going to read through that. The key part of messaging is your authenticity. So love life, let that saturate through. That's what we try to do with HB 481, our Life Act. And I think it's really important that all of us Bible-believing Christians live that out with authenticity moving forward.
I just have to say that if you're giving people relief in traffic in Atlanta and the Democrats voted against it, they're going to lose in a landslide. You told ladies, ladies they could drive in the HOV lane. You need to make that the message. Man. That's
exactly.
And it's so true, and it's so unfortunate. I, in D.C., am involved in a lot of efforts. We helped write a bill, the unborn child tax credit, all the way back in 2017, and still to this day, we cannot get a single Democratic co-sponsor on legislation that would just award the child tax credit to pregnant mothers while they are carrying to term. And so it's just unfortunate that that's where the other side is. But if we show that authenticity, it'll shine through. And Brandi is doing this work in Idaho to paint that picture. You guys have had a lot of law changes recently in Idaho, yes, really pushing the limits to protecting life at conception. However, the challenges you guys face are sandwiched between very radically pro-abortion states. Washington, Oregon, California, and even Montana still allows abortion late into the second trimester. So what does that look like? Can you give us even some examples of what you've seen now that your work has shifted with all these law changes?
Sure, yeah. Idaho is one of 13 states that was ready. We were prepared. We had a ban trigger law in place, so we are abortion-free in the state of Idaho. Planned Parenthood parking lots are empty right now. Yep. And in fact, the Boise Planned Parenthood closed in response to Roe being overturned. I thought they were supposed to be about standing with women. Abortion was only 3% of what they do, but it's pretty obvious when they're shutting clinics down across the nation that it's not really about standing with women. They want women to choose abortion. They want to sell abortions. I love Atlanta's law on the being able to claim preborn children as dependents, and I hope we get that done in Idaho. It's amazing because it is speaking that humanity of the child, into speaking that truth into our laws, and then in a tangible way supporting mothers and fathers and families. And so I just think that's incredible. When Roe was overturned for Stanton Healthcare, really nothing changed as far as the work that we do. Women are still going to be facing unexpected pregnancies, right? We have to continue, even though abortion has been overturned by the Supreme Court, Roe has been overturned, we have to work as a society to make abortion unthinkable in the hearts and minds of women that are facing unexpected pregnancies. And so Stanton Healthcare, we're busier than ever. One of the things we knew that would happen when Roe was overturned, mentioning the neighboring states, is that Planned Parenthood and a very aggressive abortion industry would try to lure women across state lines so that they could have abortions across state lines. And Planned Parenthood would try to skirt the law. And that's exactly what's happened. As recent as last week, we have a client who has shared her story and the details with us. And I'm able to share that with you today, where she was contacted Planned Parenthood with an unexpected pregnancy. They coached her on how to drive across state lines, get to Ontario, Oregon. She did a telehealth appointment in a McDonald's parking lot on her phone and was prescribed the abortion pill, chemical abortion, picked it up at a drop-off location, and they advised her to take it there, and then when she was done, drive home across state lines. So this is what's happening. It's a very, very serious problem. We know that the majority of abortions now are through the abortion pill. So we have mail-order abortions. We have the trafficking of abortions occurring, and it's terrifying. They're self-at-home abortions where women are going through this alone. Thankfully, this client who was pressured by her boyfriend to do this, pressured. Now think about how terrifying this is. And we have reported cases of this as well, where the pills being ground up into smoothies or milkshakes and the women are taking it and they have no idea. This is terrifying. This is a new frontier and it's terrifying. And so this is gonna be very traumatic on women. Thankfully, at Stanton Healthcare, through our medical director and our nurse practitioner, we provide abortion pill reversal. And so she was able to find us online. She changed her mind. She came to Stanton Healthcare and we did the ultrasound. We started her on the abortion pill reversal protocol, and that little baby has a vibrant heartbeat. And so, yes. Isn't that amazing? Yes.
Miracle.
So, and imagine, think of this, women, it used to be you'd go in for a surgical abortion and it was a 15, 20-minute procedure, right? Now it's turning into a 2 to 3 day procedure. Well, what do most women describe after they have an abortion, right? That they regret it. That most women describe this instant regret as soon as they're done. Instant regret. Well, now imagine if you take the pill and you have instant regret. You call Planned Parenthood or the abortionist for help and they say, there's nothing we can do. You already started it. There's nothing that can be done. So thankfully, there is this protocol that we can do, and it's critical. And so centers like Stanton Healthcare across the nation are able to provide this. And I invite centers that aren't doing this to look into it and get the medical staffing you need to be able to provide it, because this is where things are headed. Luring women across state lines, telling them how to skirt the law, and then these women left to suffer alone and being told that there's nothing they can do to reverse the abortion that's been started. So again, the work of pregnancy centers with the overturning of Roe, with chemical abortions, we need support more than ever. And then, as we mentioned and talked about, Stanton Healthcare, we had to hire private security. We had to spend thousands of dollars to hire private security when Roe was overturned because of the threats. And we know that there were attacks and vandalism on centers across the nation. We've installed more cameras and security. We're primarily staffed by women, staffed by volunteers, medical personnel, our clients that are mostly female, right, and children, and there's a responsibility on us to keep them safe. And how terrible that the pro-abortion industry is so enraged and so angry that they're going to go after non-profit charities that support women. That's who they're targeting and going after. They've lost their mind. They've lost their mind.
Yeah, and isn't it a shame, right, that these centers that are already strapped thin for resources and volunteers and time now have to spend money that could be going to help women, help care for these unborn children, to pay for security because of what we're seeing in our country. It is a travesty, and I love what you articulated with chemical abortion. We could have had an entire panel just on the future of chemical abortion. It's something to keep an ear out for. It's the preferred method for abortion these days. It happens only in those early weeks of pregnancy up through about 10, 11 weeks of pregnancy, and this is where the abortion industry is pushing women for all those reasons. So be on the lookout for that, and it's going to be more impactful on the women themselves. Unfortunately, it's more devastating on their bodies, leads to more complications, but emotionally, it's a lot more impactful in a negative way than even surgical abortions that we know and love. But unfortunately, we're coming close on time, and I just want to first just thank you guys for being here. This is the future of the pro-life movement. It's our state representatives, federal representatives, representatives as exhibited here. It's going to be the advocacy groups like Colin, like FRC in DC, working together with the care centers and the church, really the church leading the way, working together with messaging, with public policy to come together to protect unborn life in the womb and support and values unborn children, their mothers and fathers. This is what the pro-life movement is going to embark on. And as we've said, it all starts with praying. We are the church. We have to be the leaders. We were from day one when Roe v. Wade happened. It was the church that began the pro-life movement, that first March for Life, Nellie Gray in DC, that first January after Roe v. Wade happened, that came out of the Christian church coming there to support life. So the church has to be the spearhead moving forward. And then we have to vote. This is so important. I know we've talked about it already, but these elections are so impactful for life. While the abortion issue might not be the leading issue every candidate's talking about for different political reasons, you have to know where each candidate for governor, attorney general, state Supreme Court, down on the list, your federal representatives, you have to know where they stand for life, because whether they want to or not, they are going to have to make critical decisions on how to oversee funds for your city, your county, how to oversee laws, what to enforce, what not to enforce. So this is a new era. It's what used to be the case all the way up till 1973, but here we are again with it back in our hands, really the people to vote. And lastly, you've heard about some of these ballot referendums. You heard about Kansas. Just to know, your state also may be taking up a ballot measure. Unfortunately, if you're a resident of Michigan, your governor has put on the ballot a measure that would take a state that protects life in the womb. They have laws on the books in Michigan to protect life in the womb from conception, but unfortunately, there's now a ballot measure that would switch the laws in Michigan to allowing abortion on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy, paid for by their state Medicaid program. That's what's on before the people in Michigan today. California has a similar measure, Vermont. So life really is on the ballot. So this election, this season and on, we hope you look to the pro-life leaders and pro-life community, and we hope that you pray, you vote, and you stand. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Real quick, here in Georgia, as you're talking about voting, you asked about HB 481. The governor that you heard from that signed that into law that's on the ballot again, in 2018, he won by 52,000 votes. The state representative that authored that bill, that innovated on that bill, when he was up for re-election and Planned Parenthood attacked him, he won by 272 votes. Mm-hmm. You have to go vote. November 8th is the most critical day for pro-life empowerment that we've ever had in this country, so make sure you seize that opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Colin. Let's give a round of applause for our panel.
Thank you.
Show me